Hey everyone, welcome to another Q&A live stream. Thought I'd take a quick break between getting those billables in because the big law of life does not stop. And also before dinner, thought I'd stop by, answer some questions, go over a Q&A post I put up a few weeks ago and I've been meaning to get to. So I thought I'd go ahead and do that and also take some time to answer any questions that you guys might have in the chat as well. So if you have a question about pretty much whatever, investing, legal career, just whatever you want to know within reason, of course, definitely let me know and I will do my best to get to it in this little quick Q&A session. Anyways, let me just go ahead and dive right into the community post. This is a couple weeks ago. If for some reason you guys, or I guess it was a little under 2 weeks ago. If you guys don't get these by chance, then definitely be sure to subscribe. Then hit that bell, the bell notification, and that will make sure that you get any notifications whenever I post these Q&A community posts and all that good stuff. And I post some other things as well, like polls and questions about personal finance and whatever. And it's cool to just kind of see what you guys are thinking, what you guys are working on, and also what you guys want to know, because that always helps me to produce better content, which is all I'm trying to do. So let's see here. Starting off with Frank, formerly investing with Frank, my buddy over on Punch Card Investing, one of many in our group of 5 that we have over there. We do weekly live streams going over value investing and all that good stuff. So if you haven't subscribed already, then definitely do that. Anyways, and check out Frank's channel, by the way, too. He's got some really good stuff, a lot of stock analysis, and specifically as it relates to value investing. So great stuff over there for Frank. Anyways, what are some edges us retail investors have over institutional investors? Let's see. Well, the first edge is you don't have to appease anyone else other than yourself, which is a huge advantage. When you don't have clients calling you every day of the week complaining about why you're not investing in X or why you're not selling X stock, well, that makes it a lot easier to do what you actually want to do. And if you have some decent competencies as an investor, don't, you can, and you can stomach the volatility that will still come with investing. That's a huge advantage. But in addition to that, you also probably have a wider range of opportunities too. Take Berkshire Hathaway, for example. They have a very small a world of opportunities that would actually move the needle for them because they're such a gigantic company. You got billions and billions and billions of dollars of cash, and you're going to need a multi-billion-dollar investment most likely to really do anything that's meaningful for the company. And there's only so many of those opportunities out there. Whereas if you're a retail investor and you got 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, even $1 million, that's getting pretty high for the average person. But even at that level, there are just so many more opportunities out there. And you've often heard guys like Buffett and Munger just kind of brush off like, oh yeah, if I wanted to make $1 million, I can do that really easily, like using whatever strategy they like to use. However, that strategy might not be scalable after a certain point because, again, it just won't move the needle. Sure, you can keep doing that over and over, but you just kind of run out of opportunities, and it's not really worth the brain power and the effort to try and move to make a whatever profit it is when you just have so much money as it is. But that's not really a bad problem to have. So that's another edge. There are more opportunities most likely for you as a smaller retail investor. If you get up into the billions, okay, you might be dealing with that problem too. But again, good problem to have. Let's see. So we did not having clients, and that's a big one. And then also the edge of size, window of opportunity. That's I think those are the two biggest ones. If you guys think of one, let me know in the chat. Those are the two that come off the top of my head. And I think those are the two most powerful in any event. You could also get into some things like tailoring your investment plan to your tax liabilities or kind of more financial planning. When you can customize things as a real estate as a retail investor rather than as a someone just writing a fund or something like that, you might have some more abilities to customize your kind of financial approach. But that's very situational and depends on what you're doing. So that's what I'd say there. But good question, Frank. Thank you. Crypto Recon. In regards to rental properties, how do you evaluate opportunities? Not high level, preferably step by step methodology. You're very demanding. um, do you establish LLCs for each of your properties? If so, is it difficult to obtain financing, assuming each entity lacks a documented financial history? How do you establish credibility? So I'll answer the second question first. The I haven't done it for all of my properties. I only have done it for one where I've established an LLC. I actually have two LLCs because I plan on scaling it in time. I have a holding company LLC, which is then the sole owner member of the property level LLC, which is the property I have out in Indianapolis, and that's just a single family home. So within the property level LLC, all that's in there is the property, and then the holding company owns the other LLC. So it's two layers right there. And eventually I'll have multiple property level LLCs that each have their own property, of course. And that gives me some flexibility in being able to, and not only ideally shelter liability, definitely talk with an attorney that's not, I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. And your situation could be very different. And it might not make sense to do something like this. And it depends on your risk tolerance as well and kind of what your situation is. So I'm not making any recommendation by any point, but this is how I approach it. So ideally, if everything goes well, I'd be insulated at the property level from a liability perspective, but also when it comes to actually engaging in partnerships, or if I wanted to sell off a portion of the company, I could actually sell that whole LLC rather than having to siphon off like part of my shares if I had it all in one LLC or something like that, if I wanted to do that. But really the biggest reason I structure it that way is for the ability to have an extra layer of liability protection if all goes well. I guess if all goes poorly, and then that triggers that being a thing. But anyways, so I do have multiple LLCs with kind of a two-tier structure when I use it that way. But you can't do that with an owner-occupied loan, generally speaking, because you're buying the property in your name, so you're not buying an LLC. Some people do a quick claim sort of thing where they transfer it into an LLC right after buying it. You really got to be careful with that. You got to talk to your lender, of course, because many times they don't want that to happen. They are giving the property to you and they expect you to hold it. So if you're going and transferring it right out of your name into an LLC, that could trigger a default on your loan potentially. So you have to be very careful. Definitely, again, talk with an attorney if you're unsure about that, and talk with a lender too to see what's actually possible. But that said, it can be a bit difficult to obtain financing just as an investor in general compared to being an owner occupant. At least when it comes to single family homes, commercial style financing is very different. Anyways, like for 5+ unit multifamily properties or office buildings or retail buildings, commercial property, the financing arrangement's a bit different there anyways, but I wouldn't say it's harder or easier because it kind of depends on the deal. If the deal is really bad or not bad, if the deal is really in trouble, it's like there's not a lot of income coming in. It might be harder to get financing on that because typically the lender is lending on the actual income stream. They're not really lending on like a sales comparable that they might with a residential property, like a single family home. So I don't know if that's like better or worse financing. In my case, though, I actually did try and do a refinance on my Indianapolis rental property, and it was a little bit hard to find a single family home uh, lender who's comfortable lending to an LLC. A lot of times they don't really touch anything if it's under a certain dollar amount. It's very hard, I'd say, to get something under 100 grand. That's the reason I did a video on this many months back when I got totally shellacked by an appraiser who used comparables from like a year ago prior to the pandemic, or as the pandemic was starting, which is ridiculous, before the rate cuts and the run up we've seen in real estate. So anyways, that's a bit aside of the point. But the fact of the matter is, it was kind of hard to find someone who'd be willing to lend on an LLC, not in someone's own name. So I did have some trouble there, and that kind of is a problem with buying rental properties in general. Not everyone lends on rentals. I don't know if that's really specific to an LLC or to an investor, because in many cases I'm putting a personal guarantee on the loan anyways, and I was going to have to do that anyways. So to the bank, it's really not much unlike they're lending to a person, but they are lending on a rental, and they might not be able to sell that loan as easily to someone else like they do with owner occupied loans. They just package it up, sell it to Fannie and Freddie, and then Fannie and Freddie sell that to the Fed and big institutional investors. So the risk is off their books. And with LLC loans or rental loans in particular, they're not always sold off. They might be kept on in the portfolio of that lender. So they'll take a different sort of underwriting approach to it. So it is a bit more difficult, I'd say, assuming you have great income and can qualify and good credit and can qualify for a owner occupied loan or a more traditional loan in real estate, anyways. Um, but that's what I'll say there. I hope that answers that question. Now, to the first question, how do I evaluate opportunities for rental property specifically? I guess it's sort of similar to stocks. I definitely focus on the cash flow first. Let me pull up can pull up a rental calculator. Let's get over here. I'm trying to pull up a rental calculator, which I actually have on my website. They all have they all have addresses on it, which is not really my goal to show you guys addresses. Um, well, I guess here. Let me save a copy. Here's an example. Here's a spreadsheet that I use. This is a modified version of the one that's on my website, which you can get for free at jackduffley.com. I think it's / free stuff. Either way, there's a free stuff tab, and you can grab this. I just ask for your email so I can actually send it to you. This is a modified version of that, and these numbers are outdated. So let me get rid of these. But as you can see, I have summary over here, which kind of gives me the basic metrics on a property. But really, the first thing I'm going to do, I'll punch in the sales price, I'll punch in the after repair value, and I'll assume some sort of, here's the mortgage tab down here. I'll give some ballpark on financing. In this case, it's 20% down against the after repair value. So in this case, I'd be doing a cash out refinance, ideally at the end. So that's where I start. I'll then punch in the income. What's the rent per unit, depending on where it is. I'll add any rehab costs in no particular order, but just trying to get a ballpark on that. Taxes will kind of depend on whatever the tax bill is on that property, and it could go up or down depending on whether it was a homeowner before and whether they got exemptions that you might not get as an investor. I'll then look at the expenses. I'll include here, in this case, it was 7% vacancy, which will change with the neighborhood or market. 7% capital expenditures, which again will kind of depend on the age of the property and what you're getting into. In this case, I'd be rehabbing it a bit, so that should lower your CapEx for a while, one would think. Property management, I assume like 10% in this case. Ballpark to the insurance, you can get a quote pretty easily. And this one had a homeowner association due. And then I added like a LLC and registration fee or something like that. So I put together all the expenses, all the income, got the mortgage, and I added some closing costs here at 5% of the property value, which might be a bit high, but whatever. Now I can get a nice ballpark on what if I got this property for 160 grand and it only cost me 30 plus thousand to rehab, and I could get this pretty high rent. In that case, I'd be cash flowing $157 per month once it's stabilized. I'd be getting in the first year about $2,700 in principal pay down. So I add those together, the cash flow over the year plus the principal pay down, and that's how I get this ROI number divided by the cash I actually invest into the property. Because remember, this is after a cash out refi, so I'd only have 25 grand in this example into the property. And this deal looks pretty good if I actually get it at these numbers. This is a hypothetical deal. I'm not sure if it would actually work this way, but these are kind of your summary metrics over here on the side. And that's kind of how I do it. It's very systematic. See what the year one would be. I also had this like generic flip calculator if I were to try and flip it. In this case, it doesn't look like it'd be that great if I held it for a year. But just kind of weighing the options, seeing what the exit strategies could be. In this case, I'd be wanting to buy it as a buy and hold. So that's why I'd want to do the cash out refi. And yeah, that's pretty much how I would do it. That's how I do my initial sort of underwriting on a property, see if it's worth even going for, figure out what that target number is probably the most important part. Even if the property might be listed in this case for, I don't know, 200 grand or 190 grand. I forget what this one was. It's in Chicago. I could throw 160 grand at it. I can make an offer for 160 grand, see if it sticks. It probably wouldn't, and if it didn't, I'd move on, or maybe up the price a bit. If I moved it up to 170, would it be worth it? Yeah, it's a pretty low cash on cash, but decent ROI because of the principal pay down, and you don't have a ton of cash into it. So I don't know. It kind of depend on the property, how I felt like the risks were. But that's my really step by step. It's pretty much all in a spreadsheet. And I got to know what my rental numbers are, of course. So it depends on the area, and that's going to change things a lot. So we're getting some questions here in the chat. So let me get over to that real quick. Your person pride asks a relevant question to what we just said. Are those projected rent numbers generally accepted by your lender, or do they come up with their own calculations? They're usually going to come up with their own. They'll do like a market rent analysis of some sort. It really depends on the lender. Um, I I've never been in a position where I have to provide like my own analysis yet. I think once you get to bigger commercial deals, it might be a lot more important where you're sending basically like a brochure to them because it's a much bigger dollar amount and they want to kind of see everything. For most single family deals, that I don't think it's that particularly strenuous. They just kind of see, because usually there's a lot more comparables out there and they could pretty easily tell what it'll rent for. One would think. But that's kind of what I could say there. Trying to focus on these real estate questions first. We have Jason in the chat, the after dinner investor, a fan favorite over at Punchcard Investing. He was just on Investing with Tom's podcast, which I would recommend checking out. Investing with Tom actually has a video version of his podcast on YouTube now, so go check that out. I was actually in the middle of listening to it this morning, and need to finish it sometime soon. Anyways, is there more wealth in real estate with all the leverage effect if you know what you're doing than in stocks? Why do you do both? People seem to like stocks or like real estate. Um, the question, is there more wealth in real estate because of leverage? The best leverage is in real estate, generally speaking, at least in the US and probably throughout the world. I think the best loan terms are probably going to be on real estate. Maybe not as great as many US terms, but typically you're at least getting some sort of fixed interest rate for a number of years in many different countries, from what I understand. Um, so when that leverage effect compounds enormously, as long as you don't go bust, which is always a risk with debt. Um, but if you play your cards right, yeah, I think the ability to really catapult your net worth is probably a lot easier in real estate. I say easier with a grain of salt, a huge one. Depends on what you like doing, of course. If you don't like real estate, it's not going to work very well. Compared to stocks. But the flip side on that is it's much easier to begin in stocks because you don't need as large of a down payment or large of a rehab budget. Typically, it takes money to succeed in real estate. I know there's a lot of no money like strategies, and yeah, those are great. But typically, I mean, you have to have some sort of reserves coming in with a no money strategy. So you need money to get in pretty much no matter what, unless you're crazy and you just want to totally risk it, which I mean, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. Not financial advice. Do whatever you want to do, but it's I certainly would not want to do that. Going with no reserves, even if a bank would somehow approve me, anyways. And I don't know if I'd sleep at night, anyways. So, but the leverage effect is very very large, and you can quickly turn $10,000 into $30,000 with a decent deal, which you're going to have to get a 2 or 3x with a stock, and that's very hard to do. That is a home run, amazing stock purchase if you can get that. You could leverage that up too with margin, but the debt terms on margin are a lot worse because if the stock goes down, you're screwed. You gotta cover uh, the margin debt. Whereas with real estate, if the real estate value goes down, generally speaking, you're not going to get a margin call or anything like that, unless maybe you have like a variable rate loan of some sort and they have the ability to trigger some balloon payment. You got to be careful there too. But with your typical like 30-year fixed rate residential loan, your payment is fixed as long as you keep making it. And as long as rental values don't go down, if you're renting the property out, or your salary doesn't go down too much and you have plenty of reserves to weather any storms, then it seems like a very easy way. Again, I hesitate to say easy, but it's an effective way when done properly to really catapult wealth. Why do I do both? I actually just did a video on this. I think it was my most recent video, or one of my most recent videos. Uh, yeah, it was my most recent one, the M1 Finance update, on why I invest in stocks as a real estate investor. First off, it's interesting. I like stock investing too. It's fun, and a lot of the same principles, in my view, apply. I'm looking for a company with good cash flows, trying to get it at a discount, ideally, and it's very similar to how I'd approach a real estate deal. Try to figure out kind of what am I really buying today, and then ideally have some good growth perspective, some growth prospects in the future. But initially, my main focus is trying to get something under what it's technically worth, in my view. Um, so the fundamentals are very similar, and then I like actually having them kind of feed on each other. So I have my stock portfolio. I can leverage that in the short term to go for a real estate deal, stabilize that property, refinance out, and then throw it back onto the stock debt, and then I'm in a better position. So I really like the ability to do that. So that's one reason I do both. Um, but they're both plenty interesting. But if you don't like doing one or the other, then again, I wouldn't really do it, because you're probably not going to be as effective in the one that you don't like, because you're not going to put the time and effort into doing it. I certainly put more time and effort into real estate. That's why I have that's why I have more at risk in real estate than I do with stocks. Not that I have some insignificant amount in stocks compared to my net worth. I have a lot in there too, but comparatively speaking, pretty much all my debts in real estate, and that's where all the risk is, and that's where I'm concentrating my bets, comparatively speaking. But I want to kind of have that safety net reserve back fund of stocks kind of on the side. LLC or umbrella insurance. So kind of what I was saying about limited liability with LLCs. Another way you could potentially protect your liability is with umbrella insurance, where you kind of have an extra insurance policy in your name in the event something happens to your properties and for some reason you can't cover a judgment against you. Ideally, you'd have some umbrella insurance as kind of a second line of defense if it goes beyond your homeowner's policy or something like that. And that's a viable strategy potentially. Again, I talk with an attorney or someone. Yeah, talk with an attorney about that. They're probably going to recommend the LLC route, most likely, just because you get that extra layer. You could always do both. You have an LLC, and then you also have umbrella protection. That can get a little expensive to set up, depending on how much you're dealing with, but um, it's definitely another good option out there. I think once I get more properties, I'm probably going to get an umbrella insurance policy. I don't think it's worth it yet. I have three, and one's in an LLC. The other two in my name, and they're insured. Um, I'm not going to do it yet. And one of them is professionally managed too, and the other one I'm living in. So I mean, if, that'd be pretty extreme to be that paranoid about the one I own. But these things are liabilities in many cases. Someone gets hurt on your property, it's probably on you, and that's whether it's for better or for worse. You're going to have to pay for it most likely, if it comes down to it. Maybe not most likely, but you could have to, and it's mitigating those risks however you see fit. Just don't be careless about it is all I'll say. But I think once I have a handful more properties, I'll probably just get an umbrella insurance. It'll be worth the extra however much money it is per month to get a decent policy. Here's one about law. John Michael asks, how similar is your legal career to the TV show Suits? Now, I haven't actually seen it, other than like clips here and there. Um, my understanding is, isn't Suits like extremely dramatic? um, Here, I'll say my legal career, it's very taxing. It can be very grueling. But I'm learning a lot very quickly, because being in big law, it's extreme hours, high pressure stuff. The hours don't even get to me as much as just it's high pressure stuff. You got to be good, and you got to make sure you're doing a good job. And when you're just starting out, I don't always know if I'm doing a good job, and it's hard to tell when you are sometimes. So that's what really stresses me out. I'm going to get back to work after this, anyways. But I think it's important to take breaks when you can, to stay sharp, because if you're not sharp, you're in trouble, and you don't want to put your client in a bad position. Um, but as for like kind of lifestyle, it's dense. You don't have a lot of free time. I spend a lot of my free time with the YouTube crowd, and I enjoy that a lot. And now that it's going to be winter again, I'll probably spend a lot less time outside. So it'll be maybe more YouTube. Who knows? But it's definitely intense, and you definitely got to know you want to do it, or that it's worth it to do it for you, because it's a lot. It's a lot to devote potentially like all of your time, not all of your time, but a lot of your time in a week, especially when you got a couple deals going on at the same time. It's going to soak up a lot of time. You got to be ready to do that. Uh, so yeah, but so far so good. I've been a full-time big law attorney for a little over 3 months now, or really almost 4 months. Um, and again, it's been good, and I'm gonna keep trucking along and learning a lot as I do it. Brandon McCarthy, commercial property gain checking in. I can't say I'm commercial property yet. I just have three: a condo, a townhome, and a single family home. That's all I got. But I'm looking for a commercial deal at some point. I think ideally my next one will be a small commercial multifamily deal, probably in Indianapolis. That's kind of what I'm looking at right now. That would be great to bump up the unit total a bit and also get into the commercial game a bit more. Hi, Jake. Doing some yard work, and you'll listen later. Fantastic. Appreciate it. Always appreciate your support, Jake. After Dinner Investor says, if you're into credit card cash, check out the Wells Fargo card. No fee, 2% and 200 back on the first 1,000. That's pretty good. The 20% reward ratio based on your spend, that's pretty good. I actually just got two new cards. One was $150 for 500 in spend, so a little bit higher ratio than the 200 for 1,000. And that one has actually a couple 5% back categories, which I'm using for my phone payment now, and also for internet or something like that, or something else. I set it on auto pay already, so I just got that one. That's through Associated Bank, and that's headquartered up in Wisconsin, so near me. I'm in Chicago, and then I also got the Chase Sapphire Preferred, the kind of I don't want to say the gold standard, but one of the better cards for travel. And they have a really awesome promotional offer right now of 100,000 points when you spend $4,000 in 3 months. And I'm already up to $3,000 because I put a chunk of my basement repairs after I had that leak, which I've covered on the channel. And that'll be nice because that'll be a full vacation. I could always do cash back as well. But it'll be nice. It's practically free money. I just had to pull my credit, and my credit's great. So as long as I take care of it, it'll be nice to kind of build up some more credit history over time. I also expanded my credit limit significantly. Between those two cards, I added like 40,000 in credit limit, which is kind of nuts. So my utilization rate dropped. So I'll see how it totally affects my score next month once the average age gets brought down. But I definitely love to get some more cards over the next year. Now that I'm kind of waiting, I won't be buying another primary residence for some time, so I shouldn't be getting a mortgage in my name for a while. So it's not as imperative that I leave my credit completely untouched like I did for the past summer. So we'll see. At least that's how I view it. Bring back ninja loans. No, yeah, sure, I'd enjoy it because I think I'm great. I think I'm super competent. But the problem is, if everyone can use those, we saw what happened. So, and maybe I would turn into one of those people who shouldn't have been getting them. Get too greedy. Got to be super careful of that with crazy amounts of debt. You can get hard money loans in many cases for high fees, but there's plenty of leverage out there, is what I'll say. Not as ludicrous as it was during the financial crisis, but there you can get. I just got a 5% down loan on this property. That's putting barely anything up. It's 95% bank's money. So that to me that's crazy. But I'll take advantage of it because I can get a good deal out of it and for very little out of pocket. So it's really not my risk outside of my credit. I'm not saying I'm not going to pay by any means, but you could really leverage your money in a massive way if you play your cards right with something like an owner occupied loan, 5% down, 10% down, 0% down if you're a veteran with a VA loan, 3.5% down for an FHA loan, which I might actually do for my next one if I'm able to find a multifamily at a decent price. About 9 months from now, when my clock runs out to actually go for another primary residence, because I have to stay in this place for a year per the terms of my loan. Got a couple more questions in the post, so I'll get to those and then we'll wrap it up. Tech, another Loyal channel subscriber and supporter. Appreciate you leaving the question. What do you think about the current debt ceiling, and do you think America might default? Do you think the market will crash and possibly recession if there's a default? Another Chinese developer, Fantasia, misses their repayment deadline. Do you think China's real estate market is in a massive bubble? Okay, so one and two are kind of the same. If there was default, yeah, there'd be a huge recession. That would be a changing of the world financial order. That'd be enormous if America were to default on its debt. But I don't think they will because we print our own currency. We being the U.S. So I feel like they would inflate. They would just pay the debt interest with printed currency, and we already saw that they temporarily lifted the debt ceiling as they always do. Like, what politician is going to be like, yeah, we got to stop the spending now? They're gonna keep spending. If I would be very surprised if in our lifetime, well, maybe not in our lifetime, but if in the next few years suddenly we just decide, you know what, all this out of control spending, we got to stop. I just can't see that. I can't see that happening. Because those people get voted out right away because so many people are reliant, people and companies and institutions, banks, very reliant on a lot of government spending for better or for worse. Long term, I would say for worse. Short term, it's great, as we've seen. But uh, as Keynes would say, in the long run, we're all dead. And politicians seem to live by that mantra in a big way. So I'd be very surprised if we had a default, an act like a proper default where they just decide, you know what, we're not going to pay it. We can't pay it. We can't afford it. I feel like you'd have more drastic measures outside of that first, mainly um, printing a lot of money and theoretically inflating away the debts and destroying purchasing power in the meantime. That could happen. I think that would happen before we had a default. Not saying either is likely or when it will happen because that's very difficult to tell, but that's what I'd say there. As for China's real estate market, is it in a massive bubble? I have a limited understanding of the exact, market forces, but from what I've seen, it seems like the real estate market in China has been heavily, heavily, heavily propped up by debt. Really, a lot of the economy in China has been propped up by debt, as Chinese companies are something like 3 times more leveraged than the average U.S. company, which is that's U.S. companies have plenty of debt too. So that's a lot of debt. Real estate is no different. Lots of debt flowing into real estate, and you have the added wrinkle of a lot of central planning kind of pushing things in arguably less efficient ways, and that's going to catch up with an economy very quickly, or maybe not quickly, but it will catch up with an economy when you're putting money towards things that shouldn't have money put towards them. In this case, building up giant cities that are never filled, or giant buildings, or just building to build essentially to meet GDP targets or whatever. That's the part I don't understand as much. The kind of central planner wrinkle to it because I'm not there. I don't know what the exact uh, forces are there, but I think that plays a significant role. The fact of the matter is, it seems like there is a pretty big overbuilding problem there, and it's catching up with a lot of these bigger developers now, especially once China just said, "Hey, you got to cut off the debt, no more debt." Well, when you take it's kind of a game of musical chairs. You remove you remove the chair. Now someone's left standing. In this case, it seems to be real estate developers, and we'll see how many chairs drop off thereafter. Now the music stopped. Um, that's one to keep an eye on for sure because that's going to be significant. We'll see what the Chinese central bank does, what institutions do. A lot remains to be seen what will happen, but it's not a good sign. Is what I'll leave it at. How about something more positive from our man Karan Granani? I did a reaction video to his REIT tweet, so go check that out. And he did a reaction to my reaction, and he made some great points about kind of the advantages of REIT ownership over directly owning rental properties. But yeah, anyways, what would your ideal dream house be like? That's a good question. Question would be, where would it be? That's a question I can't really answer yet. I'm not too sure. I kind of doubt it would be in Illinois. For tax purposes, a big mansion is going to be oof. Plus, weather is not very good since 6 months of the year it's like uninhabitable. But as for the house itself, I'm kind of caught between whether I want to have like a massive fortress house or just many kind of home bases or a handful of home bases around the world or country or something. I would want to have like a place in Chicago, maybe a place in like the Caribbean, but those don't have to be big. But if I had like a big home I don't know. This is a hard question to answer. It's I'd want something with a good amount of space. I'm not really too keen on a yard or a pool or anything like that. I would want to be near a beach for sure, though. Uh, Ideally near a baseball field as well that I could use, kind of like I did and still do now up here in Chicago. I'm by the beach, just cold half the year, and I'm also by a baseball field. That's great. I like that a lot. Being able to work that in my routine. If I'm not by a field, I'd love to have a batting cage or something in the basement or in the backyard. That'd be really awesome too. Um, what else? Maybe a pizza oven. That would be pretty awesome too. I like to cook a lot, so a nice suit, suited up kitchen would be pretty awesome too. Um, Speaking of which, it's about time to eat dinner. I'm getting pretty hungry, so I'll get one more question. um, I'll keep you posted on that one, Kron, as I get closer to it. I'm a long ways away towards the design on that. But GCYT asks, how did you begin with real estate? Where did you get funding to buy it? And did you consult with anyone before doing so? Uh, I guess we'll start with the last question. Did I consult with someone before doing real estate? Sort of. I Not like in an advisory role, but I talked to people about real estate. I learned a lot about it through mainly Bigger Pockets was kind of like my initial mentor. The Bigger Pockets podcast was huge. I listened to hundreds of hours of that podcast, probably even thousands. And during an internship I had where the work was very, very mundane, and I just was ripping through these podcasts and getting all juiced up to go want to invest in real estate as soon as I was done with school. Um, so I learned a lot then. That was kind of like my first sort of foray into like more of the technicals. I initially learned about it through one of the Robert Kiyosaki books, and all of as kind of simplistic as a lot of them are, it was really eye opening for me because I hadn't thought about real estate as a business at any point, and I realized, wow, this is actually super powerful, and there's a lot of tools out there, and it's really not that complicated when it gets down to it. So it was definitely very inspiring, and I just got to learning as much as I could. But it was me alone buying it, me alone. I had great parents growing up, still have great parents that I see regularly. So, um, it's not like, it's not like I was, scratching and clawing my way out of like a terrible situation or something. I was in a very good position out of school. Um, so as soon as I started working, I started searching for a property. I got was saving pretty much everything because I was living with my parents, so that was very easy to save my whole salary. And a couple months later, I bought my first place. It was a condo. Put like 7% down. That probably equated to like 15 grand maybe into the deal. I forget exactly what I put in, but it wasn't that much relative to what I was getting, which is a property. And I house hacked that place. So I really still was living for free even after I moved out. Only this time, instead of just mooching off my parents, I was building equity. And yeah, I had to pay for my food now, but I'm building equity in a property. That property is appreciated by now by quite a bit. I got it under market value at the time as well by at least a few thousand. So it was, again, a quick way to catapult wealth. I went from having, I turned that 15 grand investment into, we'll call it, like 40 grand equity within about a year. I've since kind of repositioned the debt on that and I have a HELOC on it now, but that's how I got started. And that was just with a typical conventional Fannie Mae loan. I think it was Fannie Mae. I think that's who they sold it to, not Freddie Mac. The one I just bought was sold to Freddie Mac, but a conventional mortgage nonetheless. And I think at the time it was like 4% interest. Now I have a HELOC on it for 2.25% interest. That's variable though. But yeah, I just saved up my salary, qualified. When I talked with the lender, who I'd been talking to months before I'd even graduated college, just kind of let them know like this is what I'm going to try to do once I graduate. So I was kind of all ready to go there on my search. And yeah, so I guess the consulting question, I consulted with a broker, a lender, and then through those two people, I met my attorney, I met my inspector, I met like a handyman I needed for some basic work around the property, and did I say insurance agent? I met them too. Just met a bunch of people that built out my team, and it worked great. So building your team earlier rather than later is helpful. So I knew my lender and broker going in. I actually switched brokers halfway through I didn't have a great experience, but that's easy to do. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you really think it's the right decision. But yeah, that's how I got it. It was pretty easy once you have some money. And that's the hardest part. It's getting money to buy the deal. So if you're in a position where you want to get into real estate, but you don't have money, find a way to get some money. And I'm not saying like just go get debts, but maybe it's boosting up your income. Maybe it's learning some skill to get a new job or to start a side hustle to build up that down payment, build up the reserve fund. Then you can get into real estate a lot easier when you have some money, have that cushion, and you're not stressing that the deal might fall apart because of whatever reason, because you have some money to fall back on. So yeah, that's what I'll say there. I'm gonna wrap it up here because it's dinner time, and I'll get back to billing those hours in big law life. Lots of billable time. We have a couple transactions closing next week, so been buckling down and getting through those, and again, learning a lot, but it's intense. So, anyways, if you guys like this sort of content, live stream Q&As, if you want to see more of them, definitely leave a like on this video and let me know in the comments below if you want to see more of these. And be sure to check out the community posts where I will give you the opportunity every now and then when I'm feeling like I'm doing a Q&A to post your questions there if by chance you can't make it to the live chat. But otherwise, I'll always try to answer your questions in the chat too. But yeah, otherwise subscribe, hit that bell notification in case you don't get the notifications automatically from YouTube. So do that so you don't miss any of my new videos. So again, I try to put out new videos every single week. Until next time, everyone, thanks for stopping by and take care.